Hey, so let's get started with user profiles. So user profiles are created in Mixpanel whenever Mixpanel identifies a new user. And each profile stores data on what events the user has done, what properties they have, and so on and so forth. So there are a couple of things that we can do with the users tab, right? So if you go to the users tab, let's go to the users tab. One, you can filter users based on specific events, cohorts, or property values. So for example, let's say we want to filter users that have done that have added a 3D model in the last 30 days, right? You can do that. You can actually customize the columns that you see. So let's say you want to see more columns. You can edit the columns and you can choose what you want to see and select it so that you are able to see that. You could also export users. So you could click on export and it would download a CSV and export it and send it to your email and also download it for you, right? The next thing that you can do is actually creating and updating a profile. Now this is super interesting, right? So a lot of times you might actually just want to add new users to Mixpanel, not by getting them tracked, but you might want to add previous users, just for you to be able to calculate certain things. So you could very much do that. And there are three ways to actually create or update your user profile. So you go to the users tab, you click on edit, create or modify profile, or add edit profile, whatever. And so now here you see three things, right? So there's create profile, there's update profile, and there's import from CSV. So let's go through them, right? So the first one is create a profile. Create a profile is nothing but you can actually manually just create a new user by specifying the distinct ID and name, which are required properties. Like if you don't have them set properly, it's not going to work out, right? So you need to set a distinct ID, you need to set a name. Distinct ID is nothing but the unique ID that Mixpanel would use to identify. So it could be a UUID, it could be an email, it could be whatever you want to call it, right? And name is, let's say, a username of the user. Next, you could actually identify, you could specify other properties. So you could be like, okay, you know what, I want to add a property called, let's say, country, and you're going to be like, okay, I want to add country is India, for example, right? You want to add other properties, you could keep doing that, and you could just create your profile. And what this will do is now this user will show up in your users tab. Also going forward, if any event gets tracked with that distinct ID, all of those events will actually get linked to this specific user. So yeah, the distinct ID is actually very important, like whatever you want to set, right? The second option is update profile. So let's say, for example, there's a profile that already exists, so a user already exists, but you actually want to update their profile, with, let's say, you want to update a specific property. Let's say their number of purchases was 100, but you want to update it to 200, or you want to add a new property for this user, right? So you're just going to specify the distinct ID, whatever that user's ID is, and you're going to add the property names and the new values. And as soon as you update profile, so if a user exists with that distinct ID, it's going to update those. Either if it's a new property, it's going to add those properties to that user's profile. If it's an existing property, it will override the values, right? And now the third use case is actually importing from CSV, which is useful for creating or updating a profile. And this is usually useful when, let's say, instead of just manually doing it for one, you actually have a CSV where you have distinct IDs and you want to, some of those users are new users that do not exist on Mixpanel. Some of them are existing users. And for all of them, you want to update a couple of properties, maybe add new properties, whatever it is, right? So you're going to go ahead and prepare a CSV file, right? Which the first column will have the distinct ID. The second one would have, let's say, whatever you specify here, and so on and so forth, right? One thing, you really do not need headers in this, because otherwise Mixpanel usually treats them as data. So you're going to have this CSV, which has the first column is going to be a distinct ID, and then the other columns for all of your other properties. Just be sure that you map it right here. So let's say if your second column is name, here you're going to say, at the second position it's name, and then it'll automatically pick that up. So it'll automatically pick it up from the CSV. Cool. So once you upload your CSV, what happens is you need to assign names to each column. So just be sure that you map that correctly. And if what also happens is that if you actually don't have a distinct ID column present in your CSV, Mixpanel will actually end up generating one, right? And you do not really want that. So the first column, just name it distinct ID, just how it is like this, so that Mixpanel is able to identify it, right? With the special operator here just before distinct ID, right? So you need to include that. And now what's going to happen is, so if a profile already exists, Mixpanel is going to override that profile with any new data or updated data that's present in the CSV. If it does not exist, Mixpanel is going to go ahead and create a new profile for that user. Okay, so let's move on to the next topic, which is updating or deleting a user property, right? So now what you can also do here is actually go to a specific user, go to their and actually update their property values, right? Which is, for example, let's say we just take this user, right? And now we actually want to update the browser from Chrome to, say, Arc, right? We could do this, we could click on save and it's going to save it, right? Or we just want to delete a property, we don't think it makes sense. So in that case, we are just going to click on delete and it'll just delete that property,